I'm Joanna Small, the Public Information Officer for the Wheat Ridge Police Department. It's Friday, May 12th, and this is your WRPD Video Week in Review. Here's a summary of some of the most notable calls your Wheat Ridge patrol officers responded to over this past week, as well as a case our detectives could really use your help in resolving. Overnight on May 12th, a suspected drunk driver struck a utility box in the 4600 block of Kipling. This knocked out power from the 4100 to 4900 blocks of Field Street to Youngfield. The driver was transported to a detox facility with DUI charges pending. On May 11th, an officer was driving behind a vehicle in the 9300 block of West 48th Avenue when the driver stopped, exited the vehicle, and began to flail her arms, yelling that she'd been assaulted. The officer suspected the driver was under the influence, and she refused to answer any additional questions about that alleged assault. The vehicle was blocking traffic, and the driver was taken into custody. While walking into the hospital with the driver, she kicked and struck an officer multiple times. She's now facing second-degree assault, driving under the influence, and unlawful possession of a controlled substance charges. On May 10th, officers encountered a juvenile who was in possession of a stolen vehicle which had been taken in Denver just a few hours prior. The teen was left in the care of Jack, the Juvenile Assessment Center. On May 9th, an individual was contacted in the dumpster area of the Wendy's located in the 3900 block of Wadsworth. He was found to have a $10,000 felony warrant for burglary. He was jailed on this warrant and issued a summons for having drug paraphernalia. On May 8th, an observant patrol officer at the intersection of Kipling and I-70 Frontage Road South observed a vehicle matching the description of a suspect vehicle in a shots heard call in the area. Our officer made a traffic stop, and while the driver did have a handgun on his person, we determined the shots heard were actually from the driver setting off fireworks at a nearby job site. He was cited for that and also found not to have a valid driver's license nor proof of insurance. His registration was also 3 years expired. He was also issued a number of traffic summonses as a result. On May 7th, the WRPD patrol officer made a traffic stop at 50th and Kipling and found the driver to have a $15,000 bond burglary warrant. She was jailed on the warrant after a family member came to the scene to take custody of her child. Also on May 7th, a woman visiting someone at a rehabilitation center was causing a disturbance there. When our officers responded, we learned she had warrants for her arrest as well as drug paraphernalia. We transported her to jail, and once there, both methamphetamine and a felony amount of fentanyl pills were located on her person. She was then jailed on the warrants, possession of a controlled substance, and what's called introduction of contraband. Now here's an interesting one. Again, on May 7th, the woman called 911 to report that a vehicle she did not recognize had pulled up to her house and someone had left a suspicious package on her porch. Officers retrieved the package and found a drug combination of methamphetamine and fentanyl taped to the bottom, hidden underneath baseball and Pokemon cards. The narcotics were booked for destruction. On May 6th, the WRPD patrol officer was on routine patrol around one of the motels in the 4700 block of Kipling when he observed two people quickly walk away from a moped parked near the building. Clearance of the VIN on the scooter revealed it had been reported stolen out of Denver nearly 3 years ago. The male and female who had walked away were contacted, and the male had 7 warrants for his arrest. He was jailed on the warrants and issued a summons for second-degree motor vehicle theft. The female also had warrants and was transported to jail. While she was changing into her jail attire, hidden fentanyl was located on her person. She is now facing introduction of contraband charges. Last Friday, officers assisted our school resource officer with a swatting incident at Wheat Ridge High School. There were reports that there was a school shooting threat, and it was determined the threats were actually happening nationwide on social media. Regardless, we did ramp up patrols at several of the schools throughout the day, and everyone remained safe. We also highlighted several incidents as standalone posts on our social media this week. On Monday, we told you about the observant officer who spotted a careless driver around 38th and Kipling. She got out of her car and challenged officers to shoot her, making a move towards what appeared to be an AR-style rifle on her passenger seat. She was safely taken into custody. While the weapon was determined to be a very realistic paintball gun, there was no way to know that from a distance. Excellent de-escalation work by our officers who responded to that call. We also told you about a call in which 2 people were found sleeping inside a stolen vehicle with a screwdriver in the ignition around the 3300 block of Ames. Officers recognized the vehicle as having fled from us last month. Both the driver and passenger were removed from that vehicle and admitted to knowing it was stolen. The driver is facing aggravated motor vehicle theft charges as a result, with charges pending for the April eluding incident. On Tuesday, a routine traffic stop resulted in the arrest of 4 people, 3 for warrants, 2 of whom also were in possession of a large quantity of drugs, and 1 for having burglary tools, possibly related to a fuel theft, being investigated by the Thornton Police Department. Now here's a case our detectives could really use your eyes on. On May 9th, officers were called to the First Bank on Wadsworth for a reported fraud. A person had attempted to cash a check in the amount of $1,000 there. The teller did not feel the check was valid and was not comfortable cashing it. She compared the signature on the check to the signature of the account holder the bank had on file, and they did not match. The suspect eventually left the bank saying he needed to retrieve his phone, and he left the check behind as well as 2 different forms of ID, which we are working to determine whether actually belong to the suspect. The teller watched him get into a dark blue Chevy Blazer with no rear license plate. If you have any information about this vehicle or believe you may know who this person actually is, please reach out to our investigative team at the number there on your screen. And as always, in between your calls for service, officers proactively patrolled areas in the city we know to be higher in crime, contacting people for less serious offenses like trespassing or jaywalking, then often making arrests for warrants, drugs, and/or drug paraphernalia. Officers also focused on dangerous driving behavior on streets where you've told us you see it and where we ourselves have witnessed it, excluding our crash and traffic team, which focus heavily on speeders in school zones. Patrol officers also issued approximately 45 traffic citations. We also recovered 4 stolen vehicles, to include the ones mentioned earlier in this report. That's all for now. We'll see you next time. And remember, if you need us, we're always just minutes away.